All right, let's see. We've got one. No, still not. Oh yeah, yes we do. It's working. Alhamdulillah. الحمد لله رب العالمين له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to the penultimate class in our discussion on Ruqya and the world of the unseen. And in this class, inshallah ta'ala, we are talking about the guide to Ruqya al-Shar'iyya. And this guide what we want to do is we want to talk about what Ruqya Shar'iyya actually is, what is intended by it, and how do we go about it. Now, there is something I'm going to say, which is that I don't want to redo everything we did. I don't want to redo everything that we have done in the past few days. So we've already spoken about a lot of aspects of things. And so I'm not going to go over some of the stuff that we spoke about, but I'm going to take a new topic. And I'm going to start by talking about the characteristics of the person who performs Ruqya and the person that it's performed upon. So what kind of person, before that, let's stop for a minute. Let's go a step back a bit before that. What do we really mean by Ruqya al-Shar'iyya? I think one of the best ways of explaining it is al-istishfa'u bil-Qur'an al-Kareem. Asking Allah to give a cure from the Quran. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give a cure from the Quran. And so you are going to be reciting the Quran, and you're going to be reciting what is easy from the dua which came from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you are going to be reciting it with the intention of asking Allah Azza wa Jal for a cure. And I want to start with the characteristics of the person who recites the Quran seeking a cure from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first characteristic is Sihhatul Mu'taqad, that the person has the right belief. Because ultimately, if that belief is wrong, we go back to the hadith of our mother Aisha radiallahu anha, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. Whoever introduces into this religion something that isn't from it, it is going to be rejected. And Allah Azza wa Jal said, فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَن تُصِيبَهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Let them take a warning, those people who go against our command, that perhaps that they would be afflicted by a trial or a painful punishment. And so that tells us that doing Ruqya the wrong way, not only is it not effective, because Allah won't accept it, but it puts the person at risk of a painful punishment. And the worst and the biggest of all of the dangers is shirk. And that's why we see until today people performing Ruqya Shar'iyya, saying that we're doing this according to the Quran, the way of the Quran, and that person is committing shirk, asking you to bring objects for them to be sacrificed to the shaitan, asking for your mother's name, giving you the names of shaitan to put on your neck. This is the worst example. The second characteristic is that the person is sincere for Allah, seeking the face of Allah Azza wa Jal. As for the person who wants from this ad-dunya wal-mal wal-jah, they want status, they want money, they want dunya, this person, you're not going to see a benefit from them. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ أَخْوَفَ مَا أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ الشِّرْكُ الْأَصْغَرُ. The thing I'm the most scared for you is that you commit lesser shirk. They asked him about it. He said, Ar-Riya, to show off. And Allah Azza wa Jal will say, اذهبوا إلى الذين كنتم تراءون في الدنيا فانظروا هل تجدون عندهم جزاء. Go to the person that used to show off for in front of this dunya and ask them to give you some reward instead of me, because I'm not going to give you anything. We see people who, and this is, to see the opposite, we see the charlatans, we see the people, we see magicians dressing up as people who do ruqya. We spoke about them, the guy who sent his ruh, the istikhara, the ta'weez and all of that. But we also see people upon the sunnah, but they're just not sincere. There's no care for the patient. It's all about money. I mean, I'm shocked at the amount people pay. People will happily pay thousands of dollars for somebody to come for a few days and read. I mean, I just heard a case even in Canada, $5,000 for 5 hours of recitation. Ayn al-ikhlas. What happened about, and I'm not saying it's wrong to take a wage, but it's not about the patient, it's not about helping them, it's not about supporting them, it's just about money. You put the money in my hand, otherwise I don't come. Otherwise I don't read, otherwise I don't make dua for you. You put double, you put $1,000, you get 1 hour. You put $2,000, you get 2 hours. Where's the ikhlas? إن الله عز وجل لا يقبل من العمل إلا ما كان له خالصا وابتغي به وجهه. Allah only accepts the deed that is sincere and His face is sought by it. Allah doesn't accept anything else. The third, that the person who does ruqya to the best of their ability should be someone who is trying to obey Allah. Ikhwani, nobody is perfect. But if you see the raqi who is not obedient to Allah, not even in the obvious things, all of us have sins we do, but you don't even see obedience from that person even openly. This person is not a person suitable to recite the Quran for you. The reality is that the sins that we do, they are a cause for us to suffer a loss with our enemies, and the cause for our victory is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that includes a person being far away from sin. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, مَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. Whatever calamity has happened to you, it's because of your own hands. And if you're doing self-ruqya, this shows that one of the greatest things you can do, don't say I'm not religious enough, I'm not righteous enough, but say, let me make istighfar. Let me, before my tawbah, put forward, before my ruqya, to put forward tawbah for Allah, istighfar for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let the person be someone whose trust is in Allah and their heart is attached to Allah. And there are two mistakes we see here. One is being scared of the shaitan. إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَ فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. This is only the shaitan who makes you scared of his allies. Don't be scared of them, but be scared of me if you're really believers. The second thing that we see in terms of a person having that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first we says not to be scared of the shaitan. And we don't want to see people getting hooked up on individuals. You know, I get it a lot. I want you to read on me. Okay, but you have, you know, your local Imām can read on you. And when you speak to the person, you really believe that they honestly think that you have something and it's you. To the point they might even say, if you don't read on me, there's no cure for me. But it's not me that cures you. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it might be nice to have someone read on you who, you know, is a person with a bit of experience, but ultimately it's Allah. People traveling all over the world. I'm going to travel to the other side of the world. People message me from all the other way on the other side of the world. I'm going to travel wherever you are. I'm going to come to you so you can read on me. Why? Attach your heart to Allah. Don't attach your heart to people. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever puts their trust in Allah, Allah is sufficient for them. The person must believe that the Quran is complete shifa. And they must never ever believe that there is a sickness too great for the Quran, or that the Quran is not powerful enough against these shayateen, or that my situation, there's no way it can be solved by the Quran. And this is attached to what I said before. A lot of people, my brothers and sisters, the reason why they are weak is because they aslan don't believe that the Quran is a viable solution for them. And that's why they come, and when you say to them, read the Quran, they're like, don't you have anything else? They say, don't you have something else? Don't you have like a, you know, can't you give me a tablet? Can you give me some secret sauce? Can you give me some, you know, can you read me special dua? I'm saying the Quran. You're saying to me the Quran, I don't want Quran, give me something else. That's why these people go and get ta'weez. Why they go and get amulets and they go and get, what do you call it, these symbols and everything written. Because they're not satisfied with the Quran as a cure. Even some of the people who do Ruqya are like that. They'll come and say, you know, my Shaykh taught us all of these things and he taught us the secret ways to talk to the jinn and the secret things to do. But you want to say to them, Khwani, the Quran is enough. Let the person remember Allah a lot. And let the person guard the adhkar. Because this is the reason to be safe, right? This is the cause, what we spoke about, the causes of being safe, inshaAllah ta'ala. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep you safe. The next condition is that the person should have enough knowledge of the method of ruqya that they don't fall into haram while doing it. That's why sometimes we see the people who write the ta'weez, and we say to him, Shaykh, what are you doing? Why are you writing this stuff? And he says, oh, you don't understand. This is, my Shaykh told me to write this. This is the cure. This is Ayatul Kursi. And it's not Ayatul Kursi. He's written Alif, dal, 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 ra, 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 then 5, 7, 9, 2, 3. So what is it? It says Ayatul Kursi. He's written calling upon the shaitan and calling upon the stars. What is it? Ayatul Kursi. The person doesn't know enough about Islam to fall in, they don't know that they're falling into the haram. The person should be someone who has al-ihtisab. They expect and hope that Allah Azza wa Jal is going to reward them for their efforts. Because the person says, what if the shaitan attacks me? What if the shaitan attacks my family? What if something bad happens to me? We've already said that a person keeps to their adhkar and they try to be close to Allah. But also that a person genuinely and sincerely expects and hopes for Allah's reward in what they're doing. The person is someone who is going to command what is good and forbid what is evil, even with regard to the jinn. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, وَإِذَا كَانَ الْجِنُّ أَحْيَاء عُقَلَاء مَأْمُورِينَ منهيين لهم ثواب وعقاب وقد أرسل إليهم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فالواجب على المسلم أن يستعمل فيهم ما يستعمله في الإنس من الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر والدعوة إلى الله. He said, if the jinn are alive, possessing intelligence, commanded to do good and forbidden from doing evil, if they are subject to reward and punishment, and the Messenger ﷺ was sent to them, then it is obligatory for you to do with them what you do with a person, telling them to do good, forbidding them from doing evil, and calling them to accept Islam. The next is that the ruqya must be, and this is from the most important conditions, that the ruqya be with the Book of Allah and what is authentically reported from the dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is it. لا يزيد على ذلك. He doesn't add anything. If you hear him saying some weird things and people saying unrecognizable words, and you start hearing them saying strange things, no, this is not acceptable for us. The Quran and what is authentically reported from the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next condition is that the person conceals what happens during the ruqya. They don't spread it, they don't make videos, they don't tell people about it, because this is an amana. And it is true that things happen during the ruqya session which could not be, are not nice for the person. So they don't spread it around. And as we said before, and we'll emphasize this again, is that the person doesn't make the sick person feel like there's no hope. إذا دخلتم على المريض فنفسوا له في الأجر فإن ذلك لا يرد شيئا وهو يطيب نفس المريض. Hadith ضعيف, we said. Like, the meaning is strong. If you enter upon the sick person, make them feel like it's going to be okay. That doesn't change anything in qadr, but it makes the person feel better. And it's true. You might believe it's very hard for this person to get a cure, I don't know how they will get a cure. It's such a bad affliction. But you don't break the person's heart like that. You go to them and say to them, inshallah, by the power of Allah, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's not that bad. Inshallah, I've seen people like you get better, which is true. As for the conditions that have to be present among the patient, they are very similar to the conditions present among the raqi. But we'll just clarify, again, the correctness of aqeedah, sincerity to Allah, trying to do the best to obey Allah. If you see a patient, maybe the lady comes, she hasn't got proper hijab, say to a sister, maybe that hijab will be the reason for you to be cured. Put it properly, make it properly. Perhaps that will be the reason for you to be cured. Being far away from disobeying Allah, trying to strengthen their iman, connect them to Allah, let them learn Allah's names and attributes, let them get close to Allah by learning a bit about Islam. Wallah, shocking. People say is this part of Ruqya? It is. If you believe strong iman will help them against the shaitan, then it's your job to help them to learn the means of strengthening their iman. So someone comes and he says, Akhi, I don't really pray, and I've got a really bad affliction. Help him, support him to strengthen his iman. By the permission of Allah, help him to pray. Come, Akhi, take me to the masjid. No, I just want Ruqya. But Ruqya is one thing, but it's you need a protection against the shaitan. So come on, let's go pray together. The person has to believe firmly that the Quran is shifa and that benefit and harm are in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal alone, and that the raqi doesn't possess any power. And the person must not rush. The person mustn't rush. Rather, what they must do is to take this opportunity to actually get near to Allah by this problem they're going through. Remind them of the statement of Ya'qub that Allah told us about in the Quran. قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Say, I only complain of my grief and sorrow to Allah. And I know about Allah what you don't know. The person has to have sabr, an ihtisab, and a rida, patience, expecting reward, contentment for what Allah has written for them. Don't you remember the hadith of that lady? She had epilepsy. Do you remember the hadith?
Yes.
She had epilepsy. And she came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have epilepsy, and when I have a fit, my clothing comes off and I become uncovered. So ask Allah to cure me." He said, "If you wish, I'll ask Allah to cure you. And if you wish, you can have Jannah." She said, "Rather, I choose Jannah. But ask Allah that I don't become uncovered." So he made dua for her that she doesn't become uncovered. From the fawaid of this is what? The fa'idah from this story is that some people, their affliction will be the reason they go to Jannah. The Prophet said, if you want, I'll make dua. I will stand and say, "Oh Allah, cure you. But if you be patient with this sickness, you can have Jannah." She said, "I'll have Jannah. But just ask Allah that my clothing doesn't come off." So he asked Allah for her that when she has a fit, that her clothing doesn't come off. And she remained in that state, and Allah gave her Jannah. Remember the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this I always remind myself of. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. Wallahi, everyone in a ruqya situation needs to put this ayah, nasba aynay, in front of his eyes. These days we give victory to you sometimes and your enemy sometimes. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Why? Why do I lose? Why am I as a Muslim not getting victory today? Why am I not getting a cure today? وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah wants to test those who believe. Do you really believe? أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Do you think you're going to go to Jannah and the hardships that came to the people before you, you never experienced it? Allah wants to test your iman. And Allah wants some of you to die as shuhada, as martyrs. And Allah doesn't love the zalimeen. Don't think Allah loves the sahir. Don't think that Allah loves the magician or the jinn that affect the person or the shayateen. Allah doesn't love them. And Allah doesn't want to give them victory. But Allah gives them sometimes that some days they win and some days you lose, so that Allah will test whether you really have iman or not. And Allah Azza wa Jal will take some of you as martyrs and give you the best of Jannah because of what these people did to you. You have to keep this ayah in front of your eyes, that you remember and you keep it firm in your mind, that some days I don't win. The Prophet ﷺ fought his enemies for how long? The better part of 23 years. And he didn't get victory until the very end. Wallahi, you are not, and I am not, even like a dot in comparison to what those Sahaba had, let alone the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah Azza wa Jal made it that they waited the better part of 2 decades before Allah Azza wa Jal gave them victory. Do you think that you're going to get a cure inside of 1 second? It's possible. Everything is in the hands of Allah. But if you don't get it, don't worry. Keep going. This could be your Jannah. This could be your Shahada. This could be the proof of your Iman. And if you're doing Ruqya for someone, don't get tired. Wallahi, many people said, I wish I want to be from the Mujahideen, the ones that Allah promised the highest place of paradise. But when Allah gave you a chance to do it, you don't want to do it. You say, oh Allah, it's hard and I'm bored and I keep reading on these people all the time and the jinn trouble me. And Allah never asked you to take any, and nobody's taken a sword, nobody's taken a gun. All He's asking you to do is to have sabr upon these jinn and shayateen until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes for you victory. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, min a'zam al-jihadi fi sabilillah. From the greatest of jihad fi sabilillah. So expect the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have good thoughts of Allah. And many times the people say, I don't think Allah is going to cure me. Do you think the Prophet ﷺ ever went into a battle saying, I don't think Allah is going to help me? Or that something bad happened and he said, I don't think that Allah is going to relieve the situation of the Muslims? Have good thoughts. Allah Azza wa Jalla said in the Hadith Qudusi, Ana inda dhanni abdi bi. I'm as my slave thinks of me. How you think of Allah, that's how Allah will be. Be strong. Don't give in to the shayateen. It's not easy to be firm. ولكن عزيز في الرجال ثبات. It's rare to find people who are firm, who are firm and stick with it. Patient and raqi, both of you stick to it. Even if it takes time. No patient should be going to anyone who has strange beliefs, who is part of one of the deviant sects, who is doing ruqya with unusual words, who is asking for strange things, asking for the mother's name, giving out ta'weez. There's no doubt that this is very similar to the one who goes to the kahin. And the one who goes to the kahin is of 2 types. The one who goes to the fortune teller and doesn't believe in them. And they go to them and then they don't believe in what they say. لا تقبل له صلاة 40 يوما. For 40 days his prayer is not accepted. And whoever goes to them and believes in what they say, فَقَدْ كَفَرَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ. He's disbelieved in what was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Likewise, the one that goes to the sahir. Even if you went to the sahir and you rejected the offer that he gave you, you went to the sahir like that, perhaps your salah will not be accepted for 40 days. And as for the one who then engages in the sihr and brings him the things he requests and gives him the names and he writes down the sihr with them, فَقَدْ كَفَرَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ. That person is not a Muslim anymore. How was Ruqya done by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? There are numerous ahadith, and I'm going to tell you about 9 ways of doing Ruqya. All of them are the same basic method of reading the Quran and what is proven in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the intention of asking Allah Azza wa Jal for a cure. The first one is to recite by itself. الرقية بالقراءة وحدها. And the person doesn't do anything except recite. In the hadith of Bukhari and Muslim from our mother Aisha radiyallahu anha, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا أتى مريضا أو أتي به قال أذهب البأس رب الناس اشف وأنت الشافي لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك شفاء لا يغادر سقما. Aisha said, if the Prophet ﷺ used to go to the sick person, or the sick person would come to him, he would say, أذهب البأس رب الناس, make the pain go away, Lord of mankind. اشفي وأنت الشافي, cure and you are the curer. لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك, there is no cure except your cure. شفاء لا يغادر سقما, a cure that leaves no sickness. It doesn't mention that he blowed. It doesn't mention that he put water. It doesn't mention that he wiped. It mentions that he just would say those words. And that is one form of ruqya. And that can be useful, especially in situations where you might not want to get close to the sick person. And I can think of 2 reasons. Number one, if it is a lady, a sister, and you're not a mahram for her, you don't want to be touching, you don't want to be close, as we said. So you may, in the beginning, suffice yourself with just reading, whether Quran or whether dua. By the way, if you want a nice source for dua, there's a really nice book. I'll get you the exact name of it. It's called Ruqya Supplications, I think. I'll get you the exact name of it. It's called Supplications and Treatment with Ruqya by Dr. Saeed bin Ali bin Wahf al-Qahtani. It's very good. The same author as Fortress of the Muslim has it. The same author as Fortress of the Muslim, and it's published by Dar al-Salam. So it's very popular, very easy to get. You know, Dar al-Salam's books are all over the place. It's easy to find. So it's called Supplications and Treatment with Ruqya. There's actually an interesting story for that book. That book was actually a part of Fortress of the Muslim. Do you know that? When the Sheikh wrote Hisn al-Muslim, and then someone said to him, Sheikh, he wrote Hisn al-Muslim to be a book of Ruqya. And someone said to him, Sheikh, why don't you separate the daily adhkar from the Ruqya? So he put them in 2 parts. And Hisn al-Muslim became famous. But you can find the ad'iyah there. You can also find some of them on a reliable website, but make sure you write it correctly, okay? Because if you write it wrong, you might get the wrong kind of website. The website is duas.com, D-U-A-S.com. That's a reliable website, inshallah. It's a bit old, but it's a reliable website. duas.com. Don't put some other misspelling. If you put extra A or you change the .com or whatever, you get some weird stuff comes out. But duas.com, duas.com. The second situation where you might not want to read on someone by touching, sometimes the situation can be that the person is maybe like, you know, swinging their arms around, or they're a little bit agitated or whatever, and you can't get to them. And included in this is actually ruqya on children. Sometimes the little kids, you can't, I mean, you're not going to hold the little child down and lock their arms in place. No, let them, you know, they go, they run around, they come back. You can just read the Quran. That by itself is one method of ruqya. That which is narrated in Sahih Muslim and Ahmed from Aisha radiallahu anha. She said, كان إذا اشتكى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رقاه جبريل عليه السلام. Allahu Akbar. If the Prophet ﷺ was sick, Jibreel used to come and do ruqya for him. There's a benefit in this, which is what? The benefit is if the person is sick, it doesn't mention jinn possession. Or it doesn't mention magic. Just if you get sickness, Jibreel would read ruqya and he would say, Bismillahi yubrik. وَمِن كُلِّ دَاءٍ يَشْفِيكَ وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ وَشَرِّ كُلِّ ذِي عَيْنٍ. This is also another proof. Very powerful dalil. It's a dalil for the fact that you don't need a specific intention of ruqya when performing it. Because the Jibreel gave a general ruqya for the whole, and for everything. Bismillahi yubrik. May Allah cure you. وَمِن كُلِّ دَاءٍ يَشْفِيكَ. And from every sickness may He give you shifa. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. From the evil of the jealous person if they're jealous. وَمِن شَرِّ كُلِّ ذِي عَيْنٍ. And the evil of everyone who gives the evil eye. Likewise, Jibreel used to say, Bismillahi arqeek. Min kulli shay'in yu'dheek. وَمِن شَرِّ كُلِّ نَفْسٍ أَوْ عَيْنٍ حَاسِدٍ اللَّهُ يَشْفِيكَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ أَرْقِيكَ. In the name of Allah, I perform ruqya for you from everything that would harm you, from the evil of every soul or envious eye. May Allah cure you. In the name of Allah, I perform ruqya for you. And there's no mention of blowing or wiping or spitting in these particular ahadith. So this indicates the permissibility of doing it with just the words that you say. The second is ar-ruqya bil-Qur'ani wal-nafath. Quran and blowing, like this. And however, I mean, you can do, but like you're blowing. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam kana yanfuthu ahyanan. When he was doing his ruqya, he would sometimes blow on the person. From this is the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان ينفث في الرقية. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to blow during ruqya. The hadith of Bukhari and Muslim from Aisha رضي الله عنها أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا اشتكى يقرأ على نفسه بالمعوذات وينفث. When the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم became sick, he would read on himself, and this is from the dalil of self-ruqya. He would read on himself and he would blow. So he would read and he would read the mu'awwidhat. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. In some of the narrations, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. What are the surahs or the surah that are proven to use in Ruqya. We're going to go through them one by one. Number one, Surah Al-Fatiha. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ أَنَّهَا رُقْيَةٌ. How did you know it was a ruqya? He said, أَحْسَنْتَ. You did the right thing. You did the right thing. In some of the narrations he said, لَقَدْ أَكَلْتَ بِرُقْيَا حَقٍّ. You have certainly eaten money from the true ruqya. Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Baqarah, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ أَخْذَهَا بَرَكَةٌ وَتَرْكَهَا حَسْرَةٌ وَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُهَا الْبَطَلَةُ. هي السحرة. He said, Surah Al-Baqarah, everything you take from it is a barakah, and everything you leave from it is a loss, and the magicians cannot do anything against it. And he said, الشيطان يفر من البيت الذي تقرأ فيه سورة البقرة أو كما قال. Shaitan runs away from a house where Surah Al-Baqarah is read. And out of Surah Al-Baqarah, in fact out of the whole Quran, what is the greatest ayah? Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. So someone says, do I have to read the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah? It's good for you to read the whole surah. But if you don't read the whole surah, read what is easy for you and focus especially upon Ayatul Kursi and upon the last two ayat, because the last two ayat, the meaning is there of asking Allah to deliver you from your enemy, and asking Allah to make things easy for you, and asking Allah to remove the burdens from you, and asking Allah for forgiveness, and asking Allah for success. So that's appropriate to the situation. Can you read it over some days? You can. Like in the author, Sheikh Ali Tuwaijiri, this is his book, Al-Istishfa bil-Quran al-Kareem. It's a beautiful book. Hafidhahullah ta'ala, I asked him about it. He said, say to them to read Surah Al-Baqarah fi kulli yawmin 3 marrat. 3 times a day all the way through. I said to him, قلت يا شيخ والله كثير. It's a lot. قال إذن مرتين. Then let them read Surah Al-Baqarah twice a day. قلت والله يا شيخ كثير. I said to him, Sheikh, والله it's a lot. He said, إذن مرة واحدة. Once a day then. And ultimately, it might still be a lot. Like a person does what is easy for them. But if your situation is not getting better and you're reading Surah Al-Baqarah over 3 days, for example, no problem. And make it once a day. If you feel you need more, make it twice a day. But it is important to have consistency versus doing too much at once. It's important to do what you can do consistently. Also from the surahs the Prophet ﷺ read is قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. And in some narrations, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. These are the surahs, Al-Fatiha, Al-Baqarah, and the Quls, that are proven that the Prophet ﷺ recited them or approved of reciting them. As for the other surahs of the Quran, we can divide them into 3. Number 1, the surahs or the ayat that are recommended by the great scholars of Islam. And that's not like a hadith, but there's no harm in any ayah of the Quran that you recite. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. There's nothing wrong with anything you read from the Quran. All of it is a shifa. The min here is not tab'idiyah. It doesn't mean ba'd al-Quran. It doesn't mean some of the Quran is shifa. It means the Quran itself as a whole is shifa. All of the Quran is shifa. So it doesn't matter what you read, but for sure if you see a great scholar of Islam recommended, like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala used to read something or recommend it, And you don't believe it. You don't believe it's a hadith. You're not saying you're not saying to somebody it's your deen that you have to read this ayah. Like he used to recite a lot. أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. The last ayat of Surah Al-Mu'minun. He used to recite it, especially when dealing with the jinn. But that's not a hadith. So you don't take it as one. Does that make sense? And you're not taking it like Surah Al-Fatiha, that it's a deen, this is a proven ruqya, but you're taking it, a great scholar of Islam recommended it, and the whole Quran is shifa, so maybe I'll read it sometimes. But what I would never do is read that instead of Surah Al-Fatiha. Does that make sense? Always I'm going to put the surah that the Prophet ﷺ put first, I'm going to put them first. And the others, I'm going to read as and when. The second, which is not from the hadith, but is permissible to read, is that which is appropriate to the situation. So if you are dealing with the jinn, you could recite the surah that speak about the da'wah, calling the jinn to Islam. Surah Al-Jinn, the end of Surah Al-Ahqaf, which speak about calling. It's not the only, but two examples. The last page of Surah Al-Ahqaf and Surah Al-Jinn, which are calling the jinn to Islam. You're not reading them again because it's a hadith or something like that, but you're reading them for what reason? Because you're reading them, that it is an appropriate, it's a sensible thing to read in that situation. Likewise, if you're dealing with the jinn, read ayat of adab, the ayat of punishment. Scare them, the ayat which have fear in them. So they wake up and realize, you're doing dhulm. So you make them scared by reading them the ayat about Jahannam. Often I personally read the first 3 pages of Surah As-Saffat, for example. Not as it's not a hadith, but just because the ayat of the first 3 pages of Surah As-Saffat has a lot about Jahannam and about punishment and about the shaitan being struck by the shihab, by the thunderbolts, by the shooting stars, and about the tree of Zaqqum, and it shakes a person. The person, you believe they have sihr, there's no harm in reading the ayat that have a connection to magic, especially in the sense that you are stating your belief that Allah is the one that breaks the magic. وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. They will not harm anyone except by the permission of Allah. So that's the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat number 102, for example, in Surah Al-Baqarah. And the ayat in Surah Al-A'raf, and Surah Taha, and elsewhere in the Quran that talk about magic and it being destroyed. إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَيُبْطِلُهُ. Surah Al-A'raf, Surah Yunus. What has an appropriate connection to the topic. If you believe that the person has the evil eye, or you're worried about the evil eye, there's no harm in you reading the ayat that have that meaning, especially speaking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep you safe, like قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ. And this is our second category. And the third category is that which is none of the others. So it's neither mentioned in the hadith, nor is it recommended by any of the great scholars of Islam, nor does it have a connection to the mawdu'. And included in this is Surah Yasin, for example. A lot of times people say to you, you read Surah Yasin 3 times a day, 4 times a day. Like in Surah Yasin has not got a connection to the topic specifically. And it's not from that which the ulama recommend. And it's not from that which is proven in the hadith. However, there's no harm in reading it. But what I would again advise you to do is to have an order of priority whereby you put forward that which is in the sunnah, and the others, you might read it from time to time. Sometimes you want to read something because you yourself are affected by it and it brings you close to Allah. And maybe Surah Yasin really touches your heart and you feel like making tawbah to Allah. So from that angle, there's no harm in it. But I just don't want to see people say, I'm reading Yasin 6 times a day, 7 times a day, but I'm not reading Surah Al-Baqarah. You're going about things the wrong way, because the Prophet ﷺ didn't specifically highlight Surah Yasin, but he did specifically highlight Surah Al-Baqarah. So give priority to what he gave priority to. And then there's no harm in you reading anything from the Quran after that. In Sahih Muslim, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا مرض أحد من أهله نفث عليه بالمعوذات. When someone from his family would become sick, the Prophet ﷺ would blow on them al-mu'awwidhat, blowing on them. And this is very, very important. A lot of people just reading by itself, which is good. But better than that, if you can, read and blow. Read and blow. People will ask, how often do I blow? The answer is as often as you want, but particularly when you see that shaitan coming up and getting aggressive and talking back to you, or trying to be aggressive with you, or trying to go for you. I saw an amazing thing, wallahi, it shocked me. And I know I mention the same things every time, and people are like, you don't have any new things to tell us, but sometimes things just stick into your mind. Which I saw from our Sheikh Adil al-Mukhbil. Wallahi, it was a crazy thing. I saw it by video. Like, and the Sheikh told me himself. He told me the story himself, and I watched the video of it. The Sheikh was in the Far East. I think it was Indonesia, but I might be wrong. And he came across that there is a magician who is performing magic publicly in front of the people. And what they were doing is that it was like one of these sort of Sufi sort of magician people. And they were saying that this is a wali, and he's got very strong iman, and because of his iman, he has powers. And they were giving people to attack him. So they were giving them baseball bats and knives and nunchucks and all different types of weapons were there, guns, whatever. And they would just say, pick a weapon and try to kill the wali. But from his iman, the weapon is not going to hurt him. So they would come with, swords, knives, and the guy will go to stab him and he'll just start shaking and he'll fall on the floor. The other one will, I don't know, go with the gun, shoot the bullet, but the bullet doesn't come out from the gun, and then he falls on the floor. And these were going on like this. And so on the video, you can see the guy, I saw the guy with a knife. He came with him with a knife, and he went like that, and his arm started to shake like crazy, and then he just hit the floor. He's done. So the Sheikh said, can I try? They said, yeah. They said, here's the weapons. They got a picture on the table. They go, there's a lot of weapons on the table. And he, pick your weapon. He said, I've got my own. Is it okay? They said, yeah, you can go with your own weapon, whatever you have. You have a gun, you have a knife, whatever you have. His iman, you can't do it. But they said, look, you don't have enough iman for the wali. Just you try to attack his student. And this might have been the student. He was doing something very weird. They would rev a motorcycle. And when he was revving the motorcycle, the people around would fly in the sky, fly out like they've been hit by a bomb. He would go rev like that, and they would go like that and fly. It's all on video. They would go fly across the sky. Just as if they've been thrown into the sky by an explosion. So they said to him, go on, if you can get him, they said, actually, this is Asgharukum, this is the baby. If you can defeat the baby, we'll let you try with the Sheikh. Sheikh said, okay. He said, but I can use my own weapon, right? They said, yeah, whatever you have. So Sheikh's there in his shamag and his sandals, and he just, walks up as though nothing is happening. These guys feel flying through this weapon, there's everything. And he just walks up to him like he's just, gone to order a cup of tea. And he said, أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. I seek refuge with the perfect words of Allah from the evil He created. He blew on him. That guy hit the floor, just bangs out. This wali, the little one, is flat out on the floor. So what the Shaykh does next? Jibam kullahum, bring all of them. So he lines them up in a row. They said, look, we knew this little baby. We told you he's the baby, Yani. We knew you might have something for him. But this wali you cannot do. He said, bring all of them. He lined them up in a row. And he went. And they fell like skittles, like a bowling alley. Bang, 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 on the floor. The Sheikh said, no, I'm not doing anything. I just said, أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. Like in the fight, the reason I'm telling you this is, sometimes the jinn might, get a bit aggressive, you get a bit scared, they get a bit in your face. Is it possible you can blow on them and nothing happens? Yeah, happens to me all the time. Sometimes you go in, you've seen the video, you're like, right, Bismillah, I'm going to do the same. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. And they just like, you didn't do anything to me. But all of that is just the jinn showing you. They're trying to make you scared. They're trying to make you lose your ruqya. They're not making you strong. So just continue. You'll see times when the blowing helps. الصفة الثالثة, the third one, is to read and to spit. التفل. So this is to spit. And when I say spit, I don't mean to spit a lot, but spittle, like a little bit of water comes out, a little bit of saliva comes out. Like, so a little bit of saliva comes on, like if you saw what I did. So a little bit of saliva comes out. This is also hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, when he did ruqya upon the leader of a tribe, and he read فَجَعَلَ يَقْرَأُ بِأُمِّ الْقُرْآنِ. He would read the Quran, the Surah Fatiha, and he would gather the spit in his mouth, and he would spittle on him until he became cured. And in one of the narrations, which is a different story, an insane man was brought before So they brought an insane man, and he read on him Surah Al-Fatiha 3 days, morning and evening. And he read Surah Fatiha on him for 3 days. He read it in the morning and he read it in the evening. And that shows that even the Sahaba used to sometimes take a few days with their ruqya. Not everything was one time. Then he would spit on him. فَكَأَنَّمَا نَشَطَ مِنْ قَالَ, like he was released from chains. And the hadith of the man who was burnt, Sahabi, he said, وَقَعَتْ الْقِدْرُ عَلَى يَدِي. He said, the hot pan fell on my hand. فَاحْتَرَقَتْ يَدِي, and my hand was burnt. فَانْطَلَقَ بِي أَبِي. He said, my father, because he was young at the time, my father took me to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَكَانَ يَتْفُلُ فِيهَا. He spat on it. وَيَقُولُ أَذْهِبِ الْبَأْسَ رَبَّ النَّاسِ. He said, وَأَحْسَبُهُ قَالَ إِشْفِهِ وَاشْفِهِ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الشَّافِي. And he said, أَذْهِبِ الْبَأْسَ رَبَّ النَّاسِ. The fourth method is to do ruqya by reading and wiping. But the condition here is that the person you wipe must be someone that it is permissible for you to touch. What is narrated from Bukhari and Muslim from Aisha, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يعوذ بعض أهله يمسح بيده اليمنى يقول اللهم رب الناس أذهب البأس اشفي أنت الشافي لا شفاء إلا شفاء شفاء لا يغادر سقما. The Prophet ﷺ used to do ruqya for some of his family. He would wipe up with his right hand and say, "O Allah, Lord of mankind, make the pain go away. Cure, and you are the curer. There is no cure except your cure, a cure that will leave no sickness." The hadith which narrated in Ahmad and Tabarani, Ibn Hibban and Al-Hakim from Talq ibn Ali, that he said, "I was bitten by a scorpion when I was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, faraqani wa masahaha biyadihi." He did ruqya on me and he wiped over it with his hand, and that's for a scorpion sting. You see how the Sahaba used to do ruqya for everything, and even when you would go for the doctor, to the doctor now, if you were bitten by a snake or a scorpion or a spider, you'd go to the doctor. Subhanallah, they used to do ruqya for it. And there's nothing wrong with you joining between medicine and between ruqya. From the ahadith is to put your hand, or the ways is to put your hand on the place of the pain and then to wipe it. لَقَدْ كَانَ مِنْ هَدِي النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to command the people to put their hand on the place of the pain. And from this is the hadith of Aisha binti Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, that her father said, "Ishtakaytu bi Makkah." I became sick in Makkah. فَجَاءَنِي النَّبِيُّ صلى الله عليه وسلم يعودني. The Prophet came to visit me. وَوَضَعَ يَدَهُ عَلَى جَبْهَتِي. He put his hand on my forehead. ثُمَّ مَسَحَ صَدْرِي وَبَطْنِي. And he wiped over my chest and my stomach. ثُمَّ قال اللهم اشف سعدا وَأَتْمِمْ لَهُ هِجْرَتَهُ. O Allah, cure Sa'd and complete his hijrah for him. And the hadith of Uthman ibn Abi al-As al-Thaqafi رضي الله عنه أنه شكى إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وجعا يجده في جسده منذ أن أسلم أو منذ أسلم. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "Since I've become Muslim, I have a pain in my body." And that actually is a type of affliction that we see until today. Sometimes a person becomes Muslim and the shaitan gives him some sort of pains in his body or some sort of affliction when he became Muslim, and because he doesn't want him to stay within Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "ضع يدك على الذي تألم من جسدك." Put your hand on the place of the pain in the body. وَقُلْ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ ثَلَاثًا. Say Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. وَقُلْ سَبْعَ مَرَّاتٍ. And say 7 times, أعوذ بالله وقدرته من شر ما أجد وأحاذر. 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 I seek refuge with Allah and His power from the evil of what I find and what I fear. And the pain went away. And there are some different variations. وَقُلْ أَعُوذُ بِعِزَّةِ اللَّهِ وَقُدْرَتِهِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا أَجِدْ فِي كُلِّ مَسْحَةٍ. Wipe each time, and each time you wipe, say it. In the narration of An-Nasa'i, you say, أعوذ بعزة الله وقدرته من شر ما أجد. أعوذ بعزة الله وقدرته من شر ما أجد. أعوذ بالله وعزته. And you rub over it each time until you reach the 7 times. The 6th way is ruqya. By the way, in these, is there a defined example of each one when to use it? I don't think there is. What there is an indication. For example, if you feel pain, you definitely want to be rubbing over the place. You definitely want to be, like putting your hand on the place of the pain. If it's someone that you're not allowed to touch, so you're going to rely on blowing or just reading, reading at first, and then if you feel the need you might have to step in a little bit and blow. For me personally, if I'm reading on a sister, my preference would be generally that I would read from behind her head, because then I don't need to worry about the issue of looking at her, and I don't need to, it gets difficult because the shaitan is going and then you're trying to avoid looking, and it's a bit, practically it's difficult. So I would normally say, like, sit her down with the mahram, and I will just read from, I'll sit off to the side and from behind. So if I'm looking for her, I don't see her, but I'm close enough, maybe like this far away, like the length of my arm. So I can't actually reach her with my hand, but I can blow, read and blow. If it's a physical, visible, like a burn or a bite, definitely you want to spit on it. But spitting on it works when even there's nothing there. So there's not like a guaranteed, like you must do this in this situation, but there's things that are more indicated in certain situations than others. The sixth one is الرقية بالقراءة والنفث مع المسح. That is reading, blowing and wiping. إن حديث أبو سعيد فجعلت أقرأ فاتحة الكتاب وأمسح المكان الذي لدغ حتى برأ فأعطونا الغنم أو كما قال. He said, I began to read Fatihatul Kitab and wipe over the place that he was bitten. Because remember, in other narrations of the same hadith, it says he blew. So now it's blowing and wiping, blowing and wiping, blowing and wiping. And all of these can be used where you see if the jinn is focused in a particular place. Like when you're reading on the person and you see their hand just goes, like really like this, like they're just normal. And then they suddenly, like their hand goes like this and they start twisting. Yeah, you can take hold of it and wipe and wipe. But the condition is what? Has to be someone that is permissible for you to touch. Is there an alternative? Yes. Because the Prophet ﷺ didn't always wipe with the hand of the patient or the hand of the raqi. Aisha radiallahu anha said when the Prophet ﷺ was sick, she used to take whose hands? His hands. She used to take his hands, read the Quran in his hands, and wipe over him with his own hands. Because she said his hands had more barakah than mine. Tayyib, if we're talking about a non-mahram girl, whose hands have got more barakah? Your hands or the mahram's hands? Akeed, the mahram's hands. Your hands got no barakah at all. Your hands have got sin and evil and all kinds of problems in it. Like in his hands have got barakah in it. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it effective. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. We're not saying that they have barakah in of itself. That's for the Prophet. Like they have khair in it. There's khair in it. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. There's no khair in you touching. Like in a person, so you take the mahram's hands. You say, brother, give me your hands. And you blow in his hands and you spit in his hands, and then he wipes over the lady where she's got the problem. And then you don't need to touch her and you don't have a problem. From the methods of Ruqya is one narrated by Al-Bukhari and Muslim from Aisha radiallahu anha. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا اشتكى الإنسان الشيء منه أو كانت به قرحة أو جرح قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بإصبعه هكذا ووضع سفيان سبابته بالأرض. Said the Prophet ﷺ, if someone was sick or they had a wound or a cut or a wound or an infection, the Prophet ﷺ would take his finger and put it on the earth. ثم رفعها, then he would lift it up. And he would say, Bismillah, turbatu ardina, biriqati ba'dina, liyushfa bihi saqimuna bi'izni rabbina. He would say, Bismillah, the earth, yani the dust of the earth, and the spit of one of us that we ask Allah by His permission to cure the sick person from it. So he would spit on the end of his finger, touch the earth, and he would make that dua. And he put it on the person and make that dua. The scholars differed, is this only for the earth of Medina? And some of them said that. And Nawawi said, meaning he would spit on his finger, his index finger, he would put it on the earth, and some of the dust would attach to his finger. Because of that, his finger would be covered in sand. Then he would wipe over the sick person, or he would wipe over the wound. And he would say these words while he was wiping. And the stronger view is the qawl of the majority, that it's not specific to the earth of Medina. It can be done anywhere. The eighth method, and this is a matter where there is khilaf in it, but the jumhur are of the view that it's permissible, is to recite upon water. And that can be done in two ways. It can be done by reciting while pouring the water, and you're reciting on the place while pouring the water, or reciting on the water and pouring it. And the water could have salt in it or without salt in it. From this is that the Prophet ﷺ was stung by a scorpion. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْأَقْرَبِ لَا تَدْعُ مُصَلِّيًا وَلَا غَيْرَ أَوْ قَالَ لَا تَدْعُ نَبِيًّا وَلَا غَيْرَ. He said it doesn't leave a person praying or anyone else, or he said, may Allah curse the scorpion, it doesn't leave a prophet or anyone else. Then he requested for some salt and water. So he put the two of them together, salt water, and he began pouring the salt water over where the scorpion bit him, and wiping it, and reading قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. This hadith is the strongest hadith, wallahu alam, on this topic. It's the strongest hadith that has the mention of water on it. And that is, he requested water and salt. He put the salt in the water, because taban is a sting, and he poured the salt water while reading قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. And in some narrations, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Some of the weaker narrations also mention, in a different case, that the Prophet ﷺ said to Thabit ibn Qais ibn Shammas, اكشف البأس رب الناس عن ثابت ibn Qais ibn Shammas. Then the Prophet ﷺ took some of the earth from Bathan, in some of the sand, and he put it in a pot, and he began blowing on it with water. And he blowing the Quran over it with water, and then he poured it on him. If this hadith was authentic, it would finish the topic of reading on water, guaranteed permissibility. Like the stronger view is that the hadith is da'if. The hadith is da'if. However, the jumhur still held the permissibility of it. وَعَلَيْهِ عَمَلُ السَّلَفِ. The action of the Salaf is upon it. Meaning that it was done by a large number of the Imams of Islam, and they said there's no harm on it. You're reading on a permissible substance, and it's supported by the hadith of the scorpion bite, where the Prophet ﷺ poured the water and read on the sting while pouring the water, and there is no harm in it. And many of the Imam of Islam used to do it, and so they say that this is something that there is no harm in it. And some of them disliked it. Some of them didn't allow it. And it seems to me, wallahu a'lam, that it is a permissible means of al-ruqya al-shar'iyyah, to read upon water. And in fact, the Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala said there is no harm upon reading on a substance which is pure. Normally the two that we read upon is we sometimes read upon water and we sometimes read upon olive oil. Olive oil, because of what Allah mentioned about the blessing of it, يُوقَدُ مِنْ شَجَرَةٍ مُبَارَكَةٍ زَيْتُونَةٍ لَا شَرْقِيَّةٍ وَلَا غَرْبِيَّةٍ يَكَادُ زَيْتُهَا يُضِيءُ وَلَوْ لَمْ تَمْسَسْهُ نَارٌ. The virtue of the olive tree. And I would say if you get the olive oil, especially if you can get it from Philistine, the problem is that now people realize it's like Yemeni honey. They realize that people like olive oil from Philistine. So two things happened. Number one, a lot of people just wrote Philistine on it when it's not really Philistine olive oil. And also hatta the Israelis did this, they also realized that people like Philistine olive oil and they also put it on and stuck Philistine on it. Lakin if you can get olive oil from Philistine, because the ard is mubarak, the earth is blessed and the tree is blessed. So it's a blessed tree in a blessed tree in a blessed land. What would you do with the olive oil? You can apply it externally. And you can take a little bit internally, but don't take too much because it make you sick. But just you can take a teaspoon of it internally, but mostly we apply it externally, like a moisturizer. And there's a dalil for that in the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ told us that this olive oil is from a blessed tree, so anoint yourself with it. In other words, use it to rub on your skin. So you could take some of this oil, you can rub it on your skin, you can, and you can be fine. Likewise, black seed oil, you could also. There is a 10th method. But that 10th method, I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is I fear that it is a dhari'ah ila shirk. It's a means to shirk. Even though many of the Salaf allowed it, including Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim and a jama'ah from Ahl Sunnah, they allowed it. But I personally feel in our time it's a dhari'ah to shirk. And that is to write the Quran with dissolving like a soluble ink, which is like saffron ink or something like that, which is drinkable, and then to dip it in the water and drink it. However, why I don't like it is for two reasons. Number one, it's even further away than the issue of reading on the water, which already is an issue where there's khilaf between Ahl al-Ilm. Do you get me? Already there's a difference between the scholars about reading on water by itself. What do you think now about writing on paper and dipping in the water? There's even less evidence for that than there is on reading on water. The second thing is, for us at our time, wallahi, it's a dhari'ah to shirk. People are going to the sheikh's writing Fir'aun and Iblis and Haman and Jibrail and Mikael and writing all kinds of Ya Iblis help me, and the people dipping it in the water because the people don't know what's Quran and what's not Quran. And people are even drinking water, they don't even know what's in it. The sheikh says, he puts in there all these names of shaitan and says, here, drink it, look, it's got Quran and Ayatul Kursi. But wallahi, I don't advise you to do that. Lakin if a sheikh did it from Ahl Sunnah, one of our mashayikh in the masjid, and he wrote some ayat and he dipped it in the water, I wouldn't say he's an evil person. What he's doing is, there is many scholars who allow it, but I personally would discourage it because I believe it's become a reason for people to get fooled by magicians and things like that. So I don't personally encourage the writing of the Quran and the dipping it in the water and drinking it. I don't encourage it. I'm going to finish by describing to you the 7-day program of a Sheikh Adil al-Muqbil. And the Sheikh, I first met him in Scotland, I think it was 2013 maybe, probably something like that. I met the Sheikh in Scotland. And the Sheikh, one of the world's most famous experts in sihr and how magic works, and he spent most of his life as one of the leading, I guess you can say, it was like catching and finding and catching magicians in Saudi Arabia, particularly in the Riyadh area. He used to be tasked with a particular branch of the Committee for the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice, Hayat al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy al-Munkar, and his job was that people would call the police and report a magician. They would call the sheikh, and the sheikh would come with the police and maybe sometimes with the army, and they would, deal with that magician that they found, and they would capture that magician, and the sheikh's job would be to deal with the Islamic side of that. So I was very keen to meet the sheikh. I became very close to the sheikh, and I met him, and I was able to accompany him on some of his travels, and it was really a very beautiful time. But a lot of people came to the sheikh for Ruqya, and those who know Sheikh Adil know he's not a raqi. He's not a one for Ruqya, like Sheikh's not. You ask him for Ruqya, he'll give you a long lecture about Tawheed and, like about put your trust in Allah. But I noticed that the Sheikh kept on giving the same instructions to the sick people. Every time he would give the same instructions. And those instructions, he called them al-ashfiyah, the cures. And I asked him, Sheikh, what is this? And Sheikh said to me, take it and give it to the people. Translate it and give it to the people. So I did what the Sheikh said. I translated it, and it became what I called the 7-day program. Because the Sheikh told you to do it for 7 days. I'm going to describe this program because it's a very good first treatment. It's very easy to do. It's very gentle on the person. And you can even do it without being present. What it requires is, some water, preferably Zamzam water, but obviously if you don't get Zamzam water, it doesn't have to be. It requires some olive oil. Preferably, as I said, it'd be good if you get Filistini olive oil, but if not, get a good quality one at least. Don't get the cheap one from the supermarket, which is looks like that's what McDonald's put the fries in, It's not that, you don't want something like that. Like proper, nice quality olive oil. In it should be, like the dark bottles and everything, not something that's very high quality. Just spend thousands. Just go to the supermarket and get like a reasonable one. After that, you would need some honey. And even though I do love, of course, we all love Yemeni mountain honey and cedar honey, it's extremely expensive, And again, what I'm told, I don't know how it's like in Canada, but the people who test consumer goods, they tested the honey in British supermarkets, and they found that something like a huge percent, it was like 90%, was the bees had been fed sugar. It was basically fake honey. So the only way, and I asked a friend of mine, and he's a honey seller. He actually has a big business selling honey. And I said to him, look, I want you to tell me, how do I know it's real? People say dip the spoon in, if it drips off if it like slides off the spoon. And he said, none of that is true. He said, we have the most advanced machines. We have these kind of spectral something analyzing machines and whatever. And he said, I can tell you, there is the only reliable way to know that honey is absolutely genuine is to know the beekeeper. That's it. But there are definitely more trustworthy sources than others. If you go to like a specialist kind of like one of these like health stores, organic shops, and you get like some, natural sort of local grown honey, it's probably more likely, just on balance, more likely. Sometimes you get these certified honeys like the Manuka honey and things like that where they receive, but you've got to be careful. Even the certifications, they found so many of them are not true. What you want is, I'm not bothered about the honeys coming from the middle, anywhere, but I want some nice, good quality, natural, raw honey. And often you can find local beekeepers, in the right season, you can actually find, even maybe now in the shops, they have like, from the season, they have like, local raw honey. It's not from the mountains of Yemen, but it's good quality honey. And you're going to need some black seeds. Black seeds, they call it habba sauda, or they call it habbatul baraka. They call it kalonji. They call it black cumin. They're all the same thing. They are habbat sauda, black seeds. And what you're going to do is, you don't need the honey and the black seeds for now. You're going to keep that aside. What you're going to do is you're going to recite over the water and the olive oil. For one person, I think you need about 5 liters of water, and you need around about 250 ml of olive oil for the week, give or take, should be enough. So what I usually do is I read over the whole liter of 500 ml of olive oil, and then that will last me a month or whatever. And then I take a big bottle of water, 5-liter bottle of water. And it's not a business, yani we're not reading on 200 bottles at once, or we're not reading on I'm going to read on this huge tank of water and then I'm going to sell it to people. No, that the Lajna Daima have a fatwa about that. It's not permissible. But a person takes it and they read on the water. Surah Al-Fatiha, the Shaykh said 7 times. Remember, numbers of reading should only be done if they're proven in the Sunnah, but it came in the hadith of Abu Sa'id. 7 times, 3 times also came. 1 time also came. Odd numbers also came. Inna Allaha witrun yuhibbul witr. Allah is odd numbered and loves that which is odd numbered. You read on the water and the oil. Very easy. You're just reading Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And every now and again, blow in one. And let's just pretend this is the olive oil. I blow in the other. And then usually what I do is I just kind of swap them over. I read in one, read in the other. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. And I might read every page. I might blow every page. I might blow every ayah. I just mix it up. There's no right and wrong way. And I finished Surah Al-Fatiha 7 times. I finished Surah Al-Baqarah once. I finished Ayat Al-Kursi, that once all the way through. I finished Ayat Al-Kursi 7 times. And I read the Quls 7 times each. That would take you how long? Depends on how fast you read. Might take you a couple of hours. Might take you 2.5 hours. Depends on how fast you read. But that's the whole week done. And if you wanted, if the person was really sick and they couldn't read for themselves, yeah, you could offer to read for them. No, we're not saying no one's recitation. The recitation is what matters, not the raqi. So you could say, yeah, sure, I'll read for you, and I'll read Surah Al-Baqarah anyway. I'm revising my Quran. Some of you brothers are, mashallah, Qurra, good reciters of the Quran. Do a favor for your brothers. Do a help for your brothers. Man istata'a minkum an yanfa'a akhahu falyaf'al. Whoever of you is able to help your brother, let him do so. Help your brother out. Help your sister out. They're sick. Send them 5 liters of water you've read on, and a little bottle of olive oil you've read on. Allah, we've got our students in the Quran class constantly doing it for people. Like we say, Habibi, ready to do another set of olive oil water? Yeah, how many? Okay, give me 3. No problem. Bismillah. Make the water and the olive oil ready for the person. Give it to them. Sometimes you see the person, they're struggling to read. They don't have good Quran. You can read for them and give them. It doesn't do any harm. You don't have to be there. So now I've got 4 items. Got water that's been recited upon. I got olive oil. Of course, this is pretend olive oil. It's been recited upon. I've got some honey, which doesn't need to be recited upon. And I've got some black seeds. How are they going to use it? Very simple. Every night, and the Shaykh recommended this for 3 days. I personally do it for all 7, but the Shaykh recommended it for 3 days. Is that they take the olive oil, they put a little bit into their hand, and just like a moisturizing cream, they rub it over the whole body, head to toe. Just like a moisturizing cream. Doesn't need a lot. Just a little bit in your hands. I mean, I think I probably pour a teaspoon in my hands like 3-4 times, like just one for my arm, then a teaspoon for the other arm, and then a teaspoon for the front, a teaspoon for the back, and a teaspoon for the... it's a little bit of olive oil. It's not a lot. And I rub it on like a moisturizer. I'm not dripping in oil. I'm not looking like something that's about to be deep fried. I'm just, I've just rubbed it on my skin, and I go to sleep. In the morning, I wake up, and I might want to take a shower because of that, the olive oil that is kind of residue. I might want to take a shower. And so what I do is I take a shower, and I take a little bit of the water that I've read on, just a little bit, just like maybe 50 ml or something like that. or 100 mil, and I pour it over the back of my head. It's better cold than hot. I know it's not nice, but it's actually better. It's better to be cold than it is to be hot. I don't know why that is, but that's my experience. Pour it over the back of my head. Maybe 100 mil. The Sheikh said to do that for 3 nights. I personally do it for all 7. In addition to that, 3 times a day, you're going to take a glass of water. What's a glass of water? 200 mil, 250 mil. Yeah. You're going to take, now the Sheikh said 2 tablespoons of honey. I'll be honest, 2 tablespoons of honey is a lot. I find that to be too much for me. But it doesn't matter. 1 tablespoon is fine. Stir it. And so it doesn't have to be hot water. Just stir it, stir it, stir it, stir it, stir it, stir it, until hatta yadhub, until it goes away and it becomes like liquid, like honey water. Take 7 black seeds, drop them in the top, and drink. If you are diabetic or you have a problem with honey, no problem, inshallah. You can suffice yourself by leaving the honey out or just using as much honey as your doctor allows you to use to manage your medical condition. But the idea is, the Sheikh said, this is not the sunnah. We're not talking about a sunnah. This is medicine. Sheikh bin Baz even mentioned this. He said, this is not min bab al-ibadah or ta'abbud. This is min bab al-tib. It's like a prophetic medicine. So we've taken each of the cures recommended in the sunnah. We've taken each of the cures recommended in the sunnah, and we've just put them together into a manageable program. The black seed is a cure for everything except death. Honey, a drink of honey, the cure for everything is in 3 things. The drink of honey, as well as the blade of the hijama as well. Very good, especially when the jinn is weak and about to leave. Hijama is very important. So you can, get the hijama done as well. We applied honey, we applied some water that's been read on, the Quran and the olive oil, which is also blessed, and the Prophet ﷺ told you to rub it on yourself and put it into a cohesive program. Nobody is saying that this specific program, word for word, is in itself a sunnah. People are saying it's min bab al-tib, it's a medical prescription that gathers 4 separate things. Each one of them are a cure in the sunnah and puts them together into a workable program for you to follow. Generally what happens, and we'll finish with this, is I personally find that day 1 is usually okay, day 2 is okay. Usually by day 3, you start to really feel a little bit rough. You start to feel like quite under the weather, quite tired, you're struggling. And then inshallah ta'ala, as time goes on, day 1, day 2, day 3, you start feeling a little bit, 3 days after that, you start feeling a little bit better. And then by the end of it, you should feel fully refreshed, inshallah ta'ala. But it could be that you realize you've got something a little bit more serious that needs a bit more of a detailed treatment. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. But I would say 7-day treatment is very, very good. People come to you. I saw the Sheikh, people come to me, Sheikh, I've got jinn problems. Take the 7-day. Sheikh, I've got this problem. Sheikh, I've got the evil eye. Take this. Sheikh, my business is failing. Take this. Sheikh, someone did sihr on me. Take this. And wallah, it's a good first place to start. It's easy to do. It doesn't burden someone. Everyone's saying, everyone's here saying that, it's so hard. I don't have time for Ruqya. At least, it's an easy thing you can do for somebody. Doesn't take a lot of effort. Sometimes we prepare more than 1 at the same time. Sometimes I prepare 2 or 3 at the same time. Bottles, like a big bottle, cut 2, 3 big bottles of water and split the olive oil into little bottles and say, okay, tafaddal akhi, you take this one, you take this one, you take this one. Just for the point of view, it's not a money-making objective. It's just a, khidmat al-mujtama', serve your community. And you just go, it'll cost you what? It'll cost you a bottle of olive oils, what? Maybe $10 or something. Anyway, every now and again, and a couple of bottles of water, no big deal. And inshallah, there's a lot of good in it. And then tomorrow, inshallah, we're going to talk about the details of the self-Ruqya program, and we're also going to finish with our Q&A as well. So we're going to do both of those things tomorrow, inshallah. Tomorrow we're going to do the demonstration of Ruqya, the self-Ruqya program, the demonstration of how to do it. And we're also going to do, inshallah ta'ala, our questions and answers. That is what Allah Azza wa Jal made easy for me to mention. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Don't forget that after the Isha prayer we have our poem. Is that right? We have the last part of Manhaj al-Haq, inshallah.